Hi, I'm Stephanie Jaworski of joybaking.com. Today we're going to make peanut butter sandwich cookies, and this is what they look like. This takes two soft and chewy peanut butter cookies with that classic crisscross design, and then we're going to sandwich them together with a chocolate peanut butter cream cheese filling. Doesn't that sound good? So the first thing we need to do is to preheat our oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 180 degrees Celsius, and then you will need two baking pans. Now you can line them with parchment paper like I've done here, or really you could just butter them or even spray them with one of those non-stick sprays. And we're going to start by making our peanut butter cookies. So if you are using a stand mixer like I am here, you use the paddle attachment. You could use a hand mixer, or really, if you want to, you could just use a large bowl with a wooden spoon. So the first thing we need is a half a cup, which is 113 grams of butter. If you've watched, you know I like to use unsalted butter. I prefer the flavor, but you can use salted if that's what you like, and have it at room temperature. And what I'm going to do first, just to make sure our butter is soft, is just to beat it just until it gets nice and smooth. Simple enough. And that way, if your butter was sometimes, maybe a little cold when you're starting, if you beat it a little, then that will soften it. So next, what we're going to add is a half a cup, which is 105 grams of firmly packed light brown sugar, and a half a cup, 100 grams of granulated white sugar, and of course peanut butter cookies, we need peanut butter. So you will need 3/4 of a cup, which is 180 grams of, I like to use a smooth peanut butter. I mean, you could use crunchy, but my preference here is to use smooth with a sandwich cookie. And there are two types of peanut butter. You have like a natural or an old-fashioned, and what that means is there isn't a stabilizer in the peanut butter. And really what that means is if you don't have a stabilizer, then the peanut butter tends to separate, and a lot of times you have to stir it to bring it back together. So whichever you prefer to use here. So what I'm going to do now is just beat these ingredients just until we want a little bit of air in there, so till it's light and fluffy. That'll take probably a couple of minutes on medium high speed. Okay, that looks good. So this is what we're looking for. Very light and fluffy. The peanut butter really helps with that nice texture, creamy smooth. So now what we want to do, I like to add a little flavoring, 1 teaspoon, 4 grams of a pure vanilla extract. If you don't want the vanilla, you can leave that out because you have lots of flavor from the peanut butter. And then 1 large egg, and have your egg at room temperature because then it will mix in much easier. So I'm just going to beat that in. And as always, when you're making batter, always scrape both the sides and the bottom, because a lot of times at the bottom, the ingredients tend to stick to the bottom of the bowl. So we want to make sure everything gets mixed together. And now, of course, we need some flour. So in a separate bowl, I have 1 1/4 cups, which is 160 grams of an all-purpose flour. You may know that as a plain flour. And to that, I'm going to add just 1/4 teaspoon, about 1 gram of salt, and 1/2 teaspoon, 2 grams of baking soda. Now you may notice this is a lot less, or it's less flour in the, I'm just going to whisk this together. I'm using less flour than a normal peanut butter cookie, and the reason is I want the texture of the cookie to be a little softer than a regular peanut butter cookie, because we are going to have two together with the filling, and if it's too firm and then it's too crunchy, I like a little, it's harder to eat, tends to crumble. It's we don't want. So I like it a little softer. So now I'm just going to add the flour and just beat that in. And you want to do this on slow speed because you don't want the flour coming up in your face. Okay, whoops, came off for me there. So that looks good. And I can really smell that peanut butter in here. Okay, so now I'm just going, because there is some flour. Let's move that out of the way. There is some flour on the side, so just with your spatula, you can just do that by hand. Now you can see this is a fairly softer batter than a regular peanut butter cookie. And we are going to bake the cookies right away. We're not going to chill it. Now, if you found it overly, maybe if your butter was too soft and your batter is way too soft, you could cover and refrigerate it for, maybe 15 minutes, but this is good. So now we want to, we're going to make fairly big peanut butter cookies. So you only need one. So I'm going to use about a tablespoon of batter. So you could use like a tablespoon and with the spoon and do it. But, if you can, this is an ice cream scoop. That is about a tablespoon. So, and the reason I like to use an ice cream scoop is that you can make every cookie the exact same size. And that's, especially when you're doing sandwich cookies, you want all the cookies the same size when you put them two together. So it makes it much easier because they look more professional, because this is, how the professionals do it if every cookie is the same size. So space them like a couple inches apart. It's about 5 centimeters. Okay, that looks about right. So now we want that, we want to flatten our cookies to get that, classic crisscross design that peanut butter cookies always have. So what you need is just like have a plate or a bowl with some granulated white sugar and use a fork. And then what we're going to do, so this is a soft cookie, so you will have to kind of like so. And of course, the more you flatten them, the bigger the cookies will be because they'll spread. So then you want to go one way and then take your fork and go the other way. And that's your crisscross design. Some people actually use a toothpick and just run your toothpick down. But I'm going to do the old-fashioned way with the fork. Okay, we're almost done. Okay, so now we're going to bake our cookies. Of course, as always, everybody's oven's a little different, but I find in about between 10 and 12 minutes. So what you're looking for is the outside edges of the cookies will be nicely browned. They still will be a little soft in the center, and that's what you're looking for. So 10 to 12 minutes. Okay, our peanut butter cookies are now done. As you can see, they're starting to brown around the edges. Now, if I touch one, they're still quite soft in the centers. So I just put your baking pan on a wire rack and let your cookies cool at least about 5 minutes to firm up before you remove them from the pan to put them on a wire rack to finish cooling. So what I'm going to do that, and I'm going to bake off my other sheet of peanut butter cookies, and then when we come back, we will make our filling. So now we'll make our filling. I'm just going to use a bowl with a hand mixer. You could use your stand mixer for this, or really you can just mix it by hand. So the first thing you will need, because we're making a chocolate, peanut butter, cream cheese filling, is we need some chocolate. So you will need 1.5 ounces, which is 45 grams of either, you can use a semi-sweet or a bittersweet chocolate. I like to use like my favorite chocolate bar, and then just finely chop it, and I just put it in the microwave. And when you're melting chocolate, do it in like short bursts. Take it out, give it a good stir, and then put it back for just a little more, because you don't want to overheat your chocolate, because if you do that, it seizes and becomes like a really lumpy mess, which we don't want. And then just take it out, and then you want it to cool down just a little. If it's hot, just cool it down, and then but you still want it liquid. So I'm just going to put that aside. And then, so we will need 3 ounces, which is 85 grams of cream cheese. I'm using a full-fat cream cheese, and have it at room temperature. And you will also need 3 tablespoons, 40 grams of butter, and again, have that at room temperature. And I'm going to beat these 2 ingredients together just to make sure, get rid of any lumps and make it nice and smooth. Okay, just check that. Okay, that looks good. And then I'm going to add, because of course we need some peanut butter, is I'm going to add 1/3 cup of peanut butter, which is about 80 grams. I'm using the smooth. If you would like use a crunchy peanut butter, you could do that here, whichever one you like. Okay, so I'm just going to beat that in. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so next I'm going to add a little vanilla for flavoring, just 1/4 teaspoon, which is about 1 gram of pure vanilla extract. And you know what, I'm just going to do this, whoops, a little noisy there. Do this by hand. And then I'm going to add that melted chocolate. Now, the important thing about chocolate, chocolate is very sensitive to temperature. So you want them pretty close to the same temperature. You don't want like your chocolate really hot and your cream cheese mixture really cold, because if you do that, when that chocolate meets that cream cheese, it's just going to kind of seize up, and that's when you get sometimes little lumps of chocolate, which we don't want. So I'm just going to add a little here to start. Get my hand and just like so. Make sure, give it a really stir it in. Yeah, there you go, nice and smooth, which is what we want. And then the rest of the chocolate. This is a place where you could use a bittersweet chocolate if you want like a sharper chocolate flavor and less sweet, because you know the cookies are sweet, so a bittersweet would counteract that sweetness. Okay, that looks good. Oh. And then what we're going to do is just add a little bit of sugar to sweeten it up, plus to thicken the filling up. So I'm going to add just 1/4 cup of powdered sugar. You may know that as confectioner sugar or icing sugar. And that's about 30 grams. I am sifting it because powdered sugar, at least mine, always has lumps. And we don't want a lumpy filling. So sifting it takes care of that. And then I'm just going to fold that in. And that's our filling. Now, it depends when I'm going to fill all of my cookies right now. But you must keep in mind, because I like to store, because it's cream cheese in here, so I like to store my cookies in the fridge so I can fill them all now. If you were going to let them sit out for any length of time, you probably want to fill them just shortly before serving. Because keep in mind, with any time you make a sandwich cookie, once you take the cookies and you put your filling, that filling will start to soften your cookies. Now, some people like that, but if you want to keep your cookies a little crisp and then your filling separate, then fill them shortly before serving. Or if you refrigerate them, it does tend to keep them firm. So that's why I tend to refrigerate. So when you're, the big thing about sandwich cookies, you kind of want to get two that are, you know, pretty close in size. And so, of course, you want to do it, you're filling on the bottom, the flat side. And so just take, I only want a thin layer of filling. You know, maybe not even quite a tablespoon. Just enough to cover it. Because, you know, it's a rich filling, and what we really want to taste, you want like a nice, you don't want the filling to kind of be more prominent than the cookies. You want that kind of equal flavor distribution there. So just going to do about that, and then just put that on top, and then we have our sandwich cookie. Doesn't it look good? So I think we'll give it a try. And I love that crisscross design on the top of the cookie. So see, I'm going to cut through, I don't know whether you can tell, but it's quite crisp, and that's what happens. Now, if you fill them and let that sit about an hour or a couple hours, you'll notice that the cookies start to soften. And, you know, either way, I like them both. That's really good. You got that. They're kind of still crisp, like I said, but chewy. You got a nice peanut butter flavor. They're sweet. And then that chocolate peanut butter cream cheese filling is really nice. I mean, it plays off really well with the flavor and the texture of the cookie. So try them. And until next time, I'm Stephanie Jaworski at joybaking.com.